All right. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of The Shadows Podcast. I'm your host, Trip Odenheimer, and I'm very excited today to be joined by Steve Gamlin. Steve, welcome to The Shadows Podcast.
Hey there, Trip. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been, since we first connected, we've been very excited for this. So thank you.
Yeah. And so before we get started, Steve is a speaker. He's a vision boarder, human punch-up specialist. He is the Motivational Firewood radio show host. He's the Motivational Firewood Guy. He's got an amazing setup for those of you not able to see this. He's got the nice wood behind him. Right when we logged on, I was definitely admiring. He turned around and knocked on it to let me know it wasn't digital. There you go. It looks really nice compared to my black cloth I have behind me. But he helps people see their desired outcomes and understand your why, build action plans to achieve them. And yes, I stole a little bit of this from the Ignite podcast, but he shares his back to basics blends of positivity and humor with corporate and conferences audiences all around the country. But you know what? I'm going to say all around the world because we are super popular overseas. We're the David Hasselhoff of podcasting over here.
And I'm old enough to get that reference. So that's awesome. So to all the people in Germany who love Hasselhoff and Trip, wie geht es Ihnen?
You know what? Germany is actually our number one international audience. So yeah, we are definitely living up to that billing. So Steve, how's everything going with you right now?
Things are going great. You know, as radical as a change as 2020 was. And some people, at the end of the year, people are like, 3 words to describe it. And I saw about 27 people in a row on Facebook write their own version of total crap storm. And I just typed in learned new ways. So, my business is in a really good place, even though I can't get on a plane and fly somewhere just yet. We've created this platform to digitally deliver everything I do.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a really good place. I'm in a happy place, a hopeful place. I'm in my recording studio, which is my favorite place. And we're just rocking and rolling, just trying to help people to believe in themselves a bit more and see where they really want to go.
For our audience who's not too familiar with it, where are you located at?
We're in a small town out in the woods in southern New Hampshire.
Nice. How's the weather right now in April, mid-April at the time of recording?
Today it's it's going to be in the 50s. Friday it snowed. So Mother Nature always dumps that last little bit of snow. It's like when you have that bag of chips and you're shaking it and those last couple chips fall out.
Crumbs, yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple crumbs of snow on Friday. It was a sloppy mess, but now it's okay today.
Okay. Well, we're going to get started with some rapid fire questions for you. First one, you can have dinner with 3 historical figures. Can't be family members, but historical figures who are no longer with us. Who would you eat dinner with?
Oh my gosh. Amelia Earhart would be one because I think she was just on the cusp of so much greatness and just disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Leon Russell, one of my favorite rock stars ever. And Keith Richards, because nobody's quite sure if he's really still alive or dead or what. So I'll put Keith. I dressed up as Keith one time for a penguin plunge into the ocean because it was come as your favorite zombie theme. So I was Keith Richards for that.
Surprised you don't have
Amelia Earhart, Leon Russell, and Keith Richards.
Surprised you don't have like Belushi or a comedian or someone in there.
Just too dark.
You would bring the comedy probably.
Well, I would try to, and that's the thing of hanging out with other comics. You try to outdo each other. When they just want to sit there and be normal people, and that's, I mean, I survived 7 years of stand-up comedy, and it's as funny and happy as it is on stage. It's a pretty dark industry because that's where a lot of the humor comes from for too many people. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely, unpack that in just a little bit. Something you're afraid to try.
Something I'm afraid to try. Oh gosh, I've conquered most of the fears I've had. You know what I'm going to say actually is doing my own taxes.
Really? Doing your own taxes? No TurboTax or anything like that?
I would do some damage. Oh my gosh. I would do some damage. Yeah. I mean, it's all legit, but still to just figuring out all those forms. My sister got the brains in the family. I got the cool job. So we stick with that.
When I was stationed in Germany, I think it was like my I don't know, third year there or something, but they told me, they're like, we got this great opportunity. We just voluntold you for it. You're going to go do people's taxes for them. And I'm still that person that has to count like nines with my fingers and stuff. And so I go in there to do taxes and I'm like, TurboTax. It'll be one of those programs. Cause this was like 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. It was straight up paper filing taxes. And I found out that certain states do it a lot different than other states. And oh my gosh, I know I drove that poor girl working there crazy with, I have a question here. When it says last name, what do I put? Like, I did not know anything.
Yeah.
And those
Well, you know,
people
when
were
you're creating
there.
1,000 new pages of rules every single
Oh my
year,
gosh.
you know, it goes back to a quote from Married with Children. I mean, I'm that old to quote Married with Children.
It's a good
When
show.
Bud, the brother, was trying to teach Kelly, the sister, tutor her so she could pass her class, he said, when you try to pour a gallon of knowledge into a shot glass of a brain, you're going to spill some. So I don't do my own taxes.
So you got 2 plane tickets.
Mhm.
You got 1 plane ticket where you can return to somewhere you've been, and you got another plane ticket to where you can go somewhere for the first time. Where do you use each one of those?
Go back to Aruba and sit on the beach behind the Holiday Inn Sunspree, my favorite place on earth, under a little chicky hut with a book, right near the tiki bar. And a place I've never gone, I would love to go to Hawaii because I learned how to surf about 10 years ago. And my wife, I believe, has been there once. But I'd like to go and find where the kiddie wave section is and start there.
Nice. Take it easy.
Yo.
Most underrated comedy movie.
Oh my gosh, most underrated, because, and my wife always says, she goes, really, we're going to watch one of your dumb comedies? So to me, they'll have genius.
They're all gold. Yeah.
Actually, one that I saw yesterday that I think was underrated as a comedy.
Yeah.
Was 48 Hours with Nick Nolte, and I believe it was Eddie Murphy's first major movie, 1982.
Yeah.
As a comedy, because it was kind of a shoot 'em up cop movie.
Yep.
It had some genius comedy written into it, which I think I appreciated more yesterday than I did almost 30 years ago when I first saw it, or longer, 40.
I haven't seen that movie in a while. I'm a big Eddie Murphy. Golden Child's a really good one.
See, that one I never saw.
Oh, that one's really good. One that I like that a lot of people just tear me apart for saying it. Tim Robbins. It was Eric the Viking.
Never saw that one either.
It is so awful, but there are so many things in there that I just find myself laughing at. Me and my stepbrother used to sit around and watch it, and it was so bad, but it was so funny.
Yep. My favorite awful comedy movie ever is Caveman with Ringo Starr and a very young Dennis Quaid.
Yeah. Just the fact you said Ringo Starr in a movie.
Ringo Starr. Yeah.
It's not Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, right.
So for our audience out there, just tell us about your upbringing.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up right here in New England, been here my entire life. When I was a kid, I first saw this TV show when I was about 9 years old called WKRP in Cincinnati, but a fictional radio station.
Yep.
I saw this guy named Dr. Johnny Fever, who was their main DJ. And he had kind of shaggy-ish hair. He scruff a beard, jeans, t-shirts. He wore sunglasses indoors, which I thought was absolutely cool. And he played records, and he got paid for that. And I said, I want to do that someday. And, fast forward into my early 20s, I went to college, got the 4-year degree, graduated what my dad always said was summa cum this close, because I barely graduated college. And I just sat around not knowing what to do with my life. And a friend kept asking, why didn't you follow radio? So borrowed $4,000 from my grandfather, went to broadcast school, summer of 92.
Yeah.
Wound up on the radio for 10 years, worked 15 years worth of hours, burnt myself into the ground. And in a real short window of time, right around 2001, 2002, quit radio without a full-time job, went through a divorce, and could probably have filed for bankruptcy, but didn't, because I felt responsible for all that debt and wanted to pay it off. And I just landed in the ashes for about a year or so, figuring it out. And then a couple things happened that led to me becoming a speaker, stand-up comedian, and author, and now the Vision Board learning programs.
Okay. So that gives our audience kind of an idea of what we're going to be discussing here today. We're going to be unpacking all of what he just went over. But to the radio piece, so you said you spent a decade in radio. What's the lifestyle like working on the radio? Like early hours? Were you the AM radio guy? What was that like?
Man, everything under the roof, I think I had my hand in at some point. I was a copywriter. I was a production director. I was a morning show producer, which was my dream job. That was my favorite part. I was very rarely on the air because I didn't have the confidence for it.
Really?
And I just kind of stayed in the shadows a bit. Loved to create, loved to be part of a team, did not want to be that person in the spotlight. Yeah. Spent most of my life that way, as a matter of fact. Like I said, I worked about 15 years worth of hours in 10, volunteered for everything. I started my own DJ company to DJ weddings on the weekend. So I was pretty much working 6-7 days a week for years.
Yeah.
My cholesterol, because, radio is an industry where you don't get a lot of sleep. You don't eat very good food because it's a lot of fast food and garbage. So my cholesterol, by the time I left radio, was almost a perfect bowling score. My doctor said, we went to a health fair one time and they said, well, congratulations, you got the high score of the day. I'm like, do I get a t-shirt? He goes, no, you're going to have a stroke. Here's a list of things you got to start doing differently. Okay. And so it put me in physically, mentally, emotionally, a very unhealthy place.
Just kind of go
in my life. And it wasn't drugs or anything like that. I mean, I've still never touched drugs in my life, but it was just, I was just fried and starting to fall apart, and it was starting to hurt.
Two things I got from that. One, I'm trying to imagine you not comfortable being on there speaking because your voice is amazing on here. And then two, I'm trying to picture you doing the weddings, playing some Boys to Men. Believe
me, I roll my eyes a lot.
Some Tevin Campbell or something.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've had to play it all and stand there behind the table, look happy and smile, and I love doing it. I love being part of that. But yeah, some of the music. I'm actually on my farewell tour. This year is going to be it. After almost 28 years.
Still doing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Although last year hit it so hard that I decided, you know what? After all these years, 1,600 plus events, if a virus can wipe out everything I've worked for almost 3 decades,
yeah,
this might not be the business I want to stay in. Yeah. So I've kind of made a decision to honor my last dozen or so weddings, and then just fade out and focus 100% on the speaking and the vision board work.
Most requested song at weddings that people come up and they're like, oh my gosh, you've got to play this song. What is that?
Oh gosh. Sometimes, depending on the age group.
Yeah.
Like anybody over 40, sometimes it's still things like Love Shack.
Really?
Old Time Rock and Roll.
It's not like Bryan Adams.
No, Bryan Adams hasn't been a huge one up here.
All for Love, like the Robin Hood song. That's not
No, one. Actually, that one I have not played in probably 20 years.
Oh, okay. Played that at my wedding.
Thankfully. Thanks for putting it out into the universe. I got a wedding on May 1st. You watch, they're going to go, do you have that Bryan Adams song, All for Love?
Yeah, the Robin Hood one?
I got to call Trip. I want you to say this on video. You Trip the song.
What about like under 30? What would be the most requested?
Under 30, it tends to be, things like Cardi B, Justin Bieber, Beyonce, whatever the new hot song might be. Yeah. Some of which I really dig. Love Bruno Mars, but then you get people like Cardi B, and just it's shock for the sake of shock, and I'm not a big fan. Yeah. I'll play it because it's not all about me.
Yeah.
No, I'm there to make somebody's experience smooth, perfect, and professional. And I'll play whatever you want me to play. But some stuff I just wince. And I already told my family, I said, look, you play any of these songs at my funeral, I'm going to come back. I'm going to mess up your house.
You just hit play, smile, and eat cake.
That's it. That's it.
So you talked about your experience in radio. Talk about stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I did stand up for 7 years. Actually, right in the same moment that I became a speaker, I decided to go into stand up comedy. It's something I'd wanted to do forever because I love to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. And I just saw that part of my life kind of reinventing myself as a more confident, out there, creative person. I just started doing stand up, and I went to a class for I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks, once a week. And I just fell in love with it because it gave me the formulas. Like I always had all these ideas, but I didn't know what to do with them. It told me how to structure stuff, and I did pretty well. I mean, I was never much more than an opening act. I did a lot of open mic nights. I never wanted to pursue it to be a professional comedian, but I knew the harder I worked at it would make me a better speaker. Because as a speaker, if you can use humor and use it appropriately and confidently,
Yeah.
you become more memorable and your fees go up, that's very nice when your fees go up. So did
One
it for 7
question.
years. And then just somebody said one time, hey, Steve, we love your comedy, but if a CEO of a company you're doing a motivational event for comes in and here's your closing bit, which was known as the Viagra song, which I'm not going to sing on the show. Wasn't dirty, but it was suggestive. He said, if that person sees you doing that, you're going to lose credibility. Which one of these is making you more money? I said, well, speaking, because I'm not making hardly anything in comedy. So I said, great point. And I just walked away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I do too here on this show is guests want to come on and talk about a certain topic or a certain product or something. And I'm like, still representing the military.
Yeah.
And the military makes me a lot more money than this does. So
yep.
This makes me 14 likes a week. So it doesn't
I understand.
pay bills with this one. But so really good question here for you. Tell us about your first ever stand-up experience.
It was at a place, and I don't know if where you're at, you have these places. It's almost like an old theater. Up here, they're called Chunky's Movie Studios. And there's a big screen. And it's a bunch of people almost in like these comfortable, like lazy boy chairs.
Yeah.
And it was at a place that was similar to that. It was like a Chunky's knockoff. And that was the very first place. I think it was called the Broad Street Grill down in Amesbury, Massachusetts, about half an hour north of Boston. Big old dumpy building, cruddy food, and a bunch of us comedy graduates, the graduating class of the summer of, 04, I guess it was. I don't remember much of it. I still have a VHS tape of it somewhere, but I just know that something I created made people laugh, and I was addicted from that very first show.
So it went over pretty well.
It went over okay for a comedy graduate. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you just talked about with the radio, how you weren't comfortable being that person behind the mic. Where did that change between that and stand-up comedy?
It actually changed kind of right near the end of my radio career. I was running, I was part of a team we called the Dirty Half Dozen, like 6 of us holding together this little classic rock station without the owner even knowing it. He was in Florida. We took it off satellite and made it live again and made it really cool. And our morning guy quit. And our boss said, hey, look, if we don't get somebody else on the morning show, we're just going to have to put it back on satellite and scrap all this work we've done for 2 years. And I said, Jack, I've been doing this for like 10 years now, not on the air. And he goes, oh my God, I forgot you've been part of morning shows this whole, all these years. He goes, yeah, go ahead and do it. I was absolutely horrible. I was trying to sound like a hip DJ and trying to sound like I thought I was supposed to sound.
Welcome everybody.
Yeah, it's not the over the top thing like, hey everybody, we'll be right back on the flip side of these money makers. Nothing like that. Oh my God, nothing that bad. But one morning I just wasn't feeling it, and I just said, hey everybody, this is Steve, Big 101.5 New Hampshire Classic Rock. Hey, look, I might suck as a DJ, but if you tolerate me reading the weather, I'll give you a kick-ass rock song in about 42 seconds. And my boss knocks on the door. He goes, why the hell can't you just sound like that all the time? Because that was the best thing I ever heard you say. And I'm looking like, really? He goes, you were just you.
Yeah.
Okay. And from that, and that was the very last blip of my radio years anyway, because I was on my way out. But that little seed there is what led to me believing I could do comedy. I could be a speaker. And all the things I'm doing now, I just show up and I'm me, same person, on stage, off stage, backstage, standing on the street corner, or, and this was proven one time, walking down the Captain Crunch aisle at the grocery store.
It's you play you better than anybody else, regardless of who's listening to this. And the second you try to emulate or be someone else, you suck at it. Is something I've heard. I took that and really twisted it. But talk to us about like public speaking just in general, because I know that's a big fear that a lot of people have. And I think it was Jerry Seinfeld who said more people would more rather read the eulogy than they would or be in the grave than they would to read the eulogy.
Yeah.
What are some tips you have for people to kind of overcome that?
Well, we just touched on one of them actually is just be yourself.
Be yourself.
I mean, you've got, everybody, and I mean this to you, to everybody who's listening and watching right now. you've got something really awesome about yourself. You've got a cool message. You've got an experience. You've gone through something in your life that other people are going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be ashamed of it. Don't be afraid of sharing it. Don't think the world thinks any less of you because you went through a struggle. I would rather listen to people who go through struggles than all this Hollywood formulaic crap that keeps getting thrown at us, like who's inspiring. Show me somebody with scars all over their body because they
Oh
tried to
yeah.
live this thing called life and just kept going. And I'll take that. So just be yourself all the time. And if you're not sure why people would be inspired by you, find your oldest, longest friend and just ask this question. Why do you still hang out with me? And you're going to get a clue as to what your value is. Maybe you're funny. Maybe you're that great listener. Maybe you are the person who always reaches back and picks people up.
Yeah.
Maybe you've been through something that you might not think is inspiring, but other people would never have the guts to go for that you did. If you've been working for a company for a long time, ask your boss, hey, why do you keep me around? You're going to find a gift in there somewhere. Because
Yeah.
believe me, don't stay working at a company for 10, 15, 35 years because, well, you're a cool person to have around. You got skills. So sometimes we have to reach outside of ourselves because we don't see it in our own mirrors. Figure out what that is about you and believe it, first off. And then just keep living from that and just trying to keep make that better every time. I don't have all the answers in the world, but I tell you what, I got a lot of cool stories of the things I've survived
Mm-hmm.
because I had the guts to try it. You know, when I'm 90 years old, I want to be sitting on the front porch covered in scars because I wasn't afraid to go for it. And I'll be
Never,
smiling because I won't have any regrets.
never follow a perfect person.
No
Yeah.
such thing.
So tell us about the humor punch up specialist that you
Yeah,
are.
I love doing that. And what that means is I work with a lot of other speakers
Yeah.
who want to add humor, especially appropriate humor, to their presentations. You know, it's not just getting up there being a humorist and telling jokes. It's crafting your stories. It's crafting your physicality on stage or on camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's crafting your facial movements. It's crafting the way you use your voice. High, low, fast, slow, in the impact of it. So what I do is I help other speakers and people who present craft a funnier, more appropriate, more impactful version of themselves. Just last week, I saw on social media a speaker friend of mine. She's an amazing storyteller. And she said, I need to write a song parody for a client that she has coming up. And I said, well, I used to do that professionally in the radio industry. I said, I'll give you a hand. So I spent 3 hours writing song parodies about cheese for this particular client of hers. And she said, I don't know how to thank you. And I said, this was a blast. And this is what I do. I said, so, you know, if you could just maybe jot me a little testimonial. Her testimonial was 3 paragraphs long. And she's already opened doors for me within the National Speakers Association, which I'm a member of, and some other people whom she knows are looking for help with humor. It's
Really
something I
cool.
love to do.
Yeah.
And I'm very, you know, it took many years for me to say, I've got the seeds of it inside of me. It's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just saying, oh, well, he's funny. No. He understands the science of it and has made it part of his business. It's not just throwing one-liners out at people. It's really crafting an experience for their audiences. And that's, you know, I take it very seriously.
So you mentioned kind of to shift gears a little bit, you mentioned the darker side of comedy. Tell us about, kind of go a little bit more in depth with that. Like, because I've heard before, you know, that comedians being up on stage is very therapeutic for them because it is such a dark lifestyle. So tell us some of the things that you saw.
There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of drug and alcohol addiction. There's a lot of, I mean, just gosh, so many people, they go through hell in their lives and then they let it out on stage in a matter of 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, that's their therapy. I was down in Boston one time at a place called the Comedy Connection, which is a pretty famous place up here at the time. And it was open mic night. I was one of about 16 comedians going on. And a young man who went on before me spent about 8 to 10 minutes talking about how his father bought him a garden hose for Christmas, and then beat him daily with it.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there's not even any humor. This poor kid was just trying to get this out on stage, trying to make it funny, but you could just see he was struggling with it. And then a friend of mine looked at me and said, "You realize you're next, right? Like on the bill." I'm like, how am I going to follow this?
Yeah.
And thank God the host that night saw what was going on, understood it because he'd been in for a long time. And he put the audience back in a good place to bring me up. And he talked to that young man afterward and said, just gave him some tips and pointers. But there's just so much damage in the comedy landscape that part of the reason I didn't pursue it anymore is I didn't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a good person to be on the road doing half an hour a night and spending the other 23 and a half hours alone in a hotel. That's not a good road for me to be on.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing what I do better. Go on stage, do my thing, get off stage, thank everyone at the end of the show by standing at the doorway, which I tried to do every single night, and then go home and plug back into my real happy, upbeat life.
Yeah, and even if you look at a lot of celebrities, I mentioned Belushi at the top of this, but Farley, and I mean, all of those guys. There's drugs, alcohol, all that seems to get involved.
Yeah.
It's like they're coping with some demons.
Yeah.
So speaking of dark side, you reached a point in your life where you said, quote, life rose from the ashes of failure to success. So tell us, you kind of hinted at some of the stuff that had kind of led up to it, but walk us through that point in your life and what really changed for you.
Yeah, right around in the early 2000s, I was in my early to mid 30s at that point, just beaten down, beaten up, radio career that was slowly killing me physically, mentally, emotionally. My first wife and I, we were not communicating well at all. And that was just falling apart. Financially, I was not in good shape because I wasn't minding the store, making minimum payments all the while that debt was just piling up and piling up and piling up. And I just walked away from radio and the marriage fell apart and I just fell into the ashes. And I wound up actually moving home with family for a while because I just built a recording studio at my dad's house a year prior. And he goes, "Hey, bud, why don't you just come up here? You're here all day, every day anyway." He goes, why go rent an apartment? Just stay in the room down the hall. So that was the first kind of soft landing of all of that. And I was really beating myself up pretty bad over all these decisions. And I'll never, ever, ever forget August 2003. I had $3 left in my pocket on a Friday afternoon. It was humid as hell here in southern New Hampshire. And I just went and got a bucket of golf balls. And I'm a horrible golfer. So if you don't want to get hit, stand right in front of me. I'll never touch you. But I went to the far end tee box of this particular property. There's a big nylon wall protecting the trucks of the building next door that used to get their windshields broken. So I was underneath these power lines and I'm just hitting away, just getting out frustrations is really all it was. And a thunderstorm came ripping through. I mean, thunder, lightning, rain. Now I'm standing barefoot in the wet grass under power lines in the middle of a thunderstorm with a metal golf club. And at one point, I even actually held the club up and just said, "Go ahead. I dare you. This blows." Just go ahead. Everything else has gone wrong. And I finished my bucket of golf balls. And I looked about 2 tee boxes over, 2 full buckets of golf balls that a couple of guys ran from the storm and left behind. So I looked around. There's not a soul there. So I hit all their buckets. So like an hour later, I can't even lift my arms anymore. And I've gotten out all this frustration. I got to my car and the sun came out. And I just looked up and I just laughed. And I just thought, well played. It just made me laugh. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm done waving the metal club and the storm goes away. Okay, great. So a couple of days later, I was talking to this brand new life coach I just started working with. And he goes, "So how was your week?" And I said, "Put your pen down and listen to this." And I just retold the whole golf story, but I made it as funny as I could, really self-deprecating, but funny. And he said, "I got 2 questions for you. Are you this open and honest about your life with everybody?" And I said, "Yeah, usually in a self-deprecating way, but yeah. Have you ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian? I think you would love both." And I said, "I've wanted to do both for years, never had the guts, and never even knew what to do for a first step."
Mm-hmm.
On his desk was a brochure from a local community college that had an introduction to stand-up comedy class. Starting 2 weeks later, he goes, I got this thing here. Do you want to go? Yeah. You ever heard of Toastmasters? You mean the people that teach you how to do speeches? He goes, yeah, they give you the basic tools for all this. I said, yeah, I'll go. He says, the most award-winning chapter in New Hampshire is 2 towns away from you. And they meet every Friday morning at 7 a.m. Dude, you did morning radio forever. You can do this. And I did it. And did stand up for 7, was in Toastmasters for 8, and speaking for 17.
Wow.
All because of that one conversation that flipped it all.
Yeah. And I'm a huge advocate for Toastmasters as well. Tell our audience about what Toastmasters did for you.
Toastmasters, I tell you what, even if you don't want to be a speaker, most people in there actually don't want to be speakers. Mm-hmm. What they're doing is they're building their toolbox to be effective communicators. And some people just said, look, I want to raise at work, so I need to get my confidence up. So they came there and learned how to do that. You learn how to craft a message. You learn how to tell a story. You learn how to use your voice properly, your body movement, your physicality, your facial gestures, your timing. All of that in the first manual of Toastmasters will teach you everything you ever need to know about how to be a more effective communicator. And I'm a slow learner. I stayed for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And just kept soaking it up and kept moving on into humorous speeches and all these other things. I entered every competition I could, and I had a ball.
I was wanting to go to Toastmasters. I believe it was here when I first got here, and one of my mentors had advised me. They're like, I wouldn't really do it. You've been teaching for as long as you have. You already get up into, you have a podcast, and but even yours kind of resonates with me because you had experience with radio, you had experience with comedy. And what was the biggest thing you learned about yourself, even testing the waters with Toastmasters?
That what I was hearing while I was speaking was very rarely accurate of what was really happening. I used to videotape, and I suggest this to everybody. If you have to do presentations or you're in Toastmasters or whatever, practice, and record everything, and then watch it back and listen to it. I'd be up there thinking I'm bombing. I'd say something that was supposed to be funny. In my ears, I'm not hearing applause or laughter. And I would jump into the next thing, and I would get nervous, and my timing would go all off.
Quick.
And then somebody would say, Steve, why didn't you wait till we were done laughing to say your next thing? We didn't hear the next thing that was supposed to be funny, and then nobody laughed at that. And I looked at the person, I go, they were laughing? I was so in the moment of trying to deliver. I didn't just relax and be part of the experience with the audience. I spoke at them. And I would listen back to the tapes. I'm like, how could I not hear that?
Yeah.
I was so in my head about trying to be perfect. I didn't become part of what was actually happening. And that's one of the biggest things I learned. Plug into the room. You're not just a speaker with a wire hanging out of it. You're part of an experience and a sharing of energy. And the day you understand that, you're going to get so much better.
It's amazing how much you feed off of an audience. And I didn't realize that until I started going virtual, and I went in to go teach, and everyone had their camera off. And I was like, hey, if y'all don't mind turning your camera on. And nobody did. And I said, okay, that went over well. And then I struggled so much to do that brief because I couldn't get nonverbals, verbals, nothing from them. I mean, it was, can I get someone to answer me? All right, I think I've got 12 drones on here with me. But yeah, I know exactly which. And then the recording piece. Yeah. I go back and listen to myself when I'm editing these episodes. And oh my gosh, it is hard at times because you're like, did that sound like that? And then you're right. Why did I rush? Why did I jump straight into that next piece? That's interesting you said that.
Yeah.
So next thing I want to talk to you about before we get into, because I see behind you the vision board mastery. I'm definitely going that route. But let's talk about the Motivational Firewood Guy, because you've got a radio show. I guess it'd be like a / podcast because it's on. So, okay. So talk to us about being the Motivational Firewood Guy.
Yeah. Early in my speaking career, I went to a National Speakers Association meeting in down near Boston. We have NSA New England. It covers all the New England states. Somebody said, you got to go there because these are speakers. They can plug you in. They can teach you stuff. And I said, okay. So I walk in And of course, it's my first time. I'm a visitor, not even a member yet. So you get that blue badge that just says, "Hi, my name is," with the Sharpie, Steve. There's no credentials or anything. I'm just, clueless. So I walk in, and this gentleman named Don goes, "Oh, hey, Steve. Hey, my name is Don. It's your first time here, blue badge. So what do you do?" I said, "I want to be a motivational speaker." He said, "Oh, great. Well, why? And what sets you apart?" I said, "Well, I want to help people." He goes, "Well, we all want to help people, but what makes you uniquely you?" And he was so gracious and so patient with this new guy coming in. And finally, after a few minutes, I said, "Well, you know what, Don, if somebody's coming to hear me speak, it means that something in their life isn't really great yet. And they got the spark of hope that they want something better. And if I share a story or a lesson or example or something I've gone through and overcome, and they wake up the next day and they do something with it, it's kind of like I gave them motivational firewood." And he goes, "Ooh, do you know anything about trademarks?" I said, "Not a clue." He said, "Look it up." He goes, "I like the concept of that." He goes, "It's very unique." He goes, "I think what I like most is the way your face just lit up when you told me that." He goes, "That was awesome." He goes, "That's a good concept, young man. Why don't you," he goes, "pursue that and stay with it." And I've owned the trademark for Motivational Firewood ever since.
Yeah. Tell us about your radio show / podcast.
Yeah, I just call it the Motivational Firewood Radio Show. And whatever I feel like talking about on a certain week. I'm kind of in between seasons right now, taking a break
Season
and
2,
being a
right?
guest. Oh gosh, it's about season 10
Is it?
at this point. Oh, I've done hundreds of shows at
Okay.
this point, and I love it.
Yeah.
And the reason I do it is because if life teaches me something, and you do the same thing, I mean, you learn something and you share it on your show.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a way for more people to be able to hear and plug in and just get a feel for what we're all about, and not only who we are, but why we are and how we are.
Yeah.
And if it's attractive to them in a magnetic sort of way, they'll listen. And I love setting up a recording studio, turning on the mic and just having a conversation with people all around the world. It's such a cool feeling.
And they can find that on iTunes.
Yeah, it's on iTunes. It's on Anchor as well as where it's based. So just look up Motivational Firewood. Yeah, you'll find me there.
Okay. And now the next thing I want to shift over to, that vision board mastery that you have behind you. So first thing I have to ask you about this, how'd you get into that?
Very, very early. Actually, right when I started being a speaker, that same coach who asked me the question.
Don?
No, it was Dan. Coach Dan was the person who asked me after the golf club in Lightning.
Oh, gotcha.
He had said, "Have you ever heard of The Secret?" And it was brand new at the time on DVD anyway. So I went and I got it. And it's like an hour and a half long DVD. And I watched it every Sunday night for 2 months to learn about law of attraction and what's all this success and this and that. And for about 3 minutes out of 98 minutes, this guy named John Assaraf was talking about vision boards that he had in a box in his home. And his son was kicking the box and he pulls out the vision boards. He's trying to explain to his kid, I think of a goal I want. I put a picture on a board and then it can happen. And I was so fascinated by that. I mean, some of the rest of The Secret, genie in a magic lamp wishing for things, I'm like, take it, leave it. But this whole vision board thing, I was so fascinated by. So I started to do research on it and not studying quantum physics or quantum mechanics because I'm not that guy. But it's all about if you identify exactly what you want or have a really good concept of it and you kind of say, okay, this is what I want. And then you understand why you want it. You understand if you're the right person, if you have the right behavior styles, that you're going to go after it, or if you have to bring other people in to help you, and how you can become the person you need to be to achieve it, and then take all the action steps necessary. Mm-hmm. And so many people, what were we taught? New Year's resolutions. Every year we write down, I want to be happy. I want to be healthy. I want more money. For what those are. Those are the things we find at the end of the year. Folded up on a yellow piece of paper with like salsa stains and the pizza guy's number, keeping the living room lamp from rocking. And we're cleaning the house between Christmas and New Year's, and we go, what the heck is this? And you go, oh no,
Oh, I was
I've
supposed
got
to
1,
run
2,
this
3, 4,
year.
5 days left, and
I
I'm
was
not
supposed to
happy,
run a
healthy,
mile a
or
day.
have more money. Yeah, exactly. And so what I do is work with people in 9 major areas of our lives, not to just broad brush: physical health, emotional well-being, your connections, your relationships, your career, your finances, your spirituality, your ethics, morals, and integrity.
Hmm.
How ethically you're going to travel this road to get where you want to go. And all of these things that work together to make us up 24/7. It's not balance between work life. It's integration of everything. Tony Hsieh, former CEO of Zappos, is the person who clued me into that way of thinking. Everything that's a part of us is a part of us 24/7. So we need to make sure that all these things are working optimally. Doesn't all have to be at 10, but at least understand they're all working together to help us to get there. And I was so fascinated by that I started to write about it. And I started building my own boards. And then I started teaching it, did open to the public events for a while,
Hmm.
and then started teaching it within companies and seeing the results they were getting from their small teams. And somebody reached out one time and said, "Hey, Steve, I can't afford to bring you in. I'm a solopreneur. What the heck do I do?" So I said, okay. So I created a 10 module audio learning program to guide people through it. And unlike some of the programs that we've had to buy over the years, it
Yeah.
doesn't come with a 400-page workbook. It doesn't come with a 20 DVD collection. It's 74 minutes and 52 seconds of really good audio. That's the entire program.
Wow.
All 10 modules added together would fit on, a few years ago, 1 CD.
Where can somebody find that?
If you go to motivationalfirewood.com on the products page, it's
Nice.
right there. And yeah, we're having a ball now, because with COVID, I can't fly to a company anymore. So what we
Yeah.
did, we made it available for team members to all log in, go through it digitally, and then via Zoom, we have these monthly or twice a month group coaching calls. And tell you what, I like this model of delivery better,
Really?
because it allows me to stay closer longer with the company team versus flying in, doing a one and done,
Catching a flight out.
and catching a flight out, and that being
Yeah.
it. I always felt so bad. I said, look, I'm not a roasted chicken. We're not set it and forget it here.
Yeah.
Like a little Saturday morning infomercial. I said, I actually prefer the way that we've created to do it now. Now, it doesn't mean when things are better, I won't go in and do a live event,
Mhm.
but give people access to the online program and then create that ongoing coaching. And we're seeing way better results, building a
Yeah.
longer relationship with them. And as a coach, I mean, come on, I cheer, I jump up and down, I laugh, I cry with my clients. We're so connected.
That's awesome.
It's not just motivational mad libs. I hate that crap. That's part of
Yeah.
why I became a speaker.
Yeah.
Sick of rah, rah, rah by my stuff. Just don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you started off talking about law of attraction. I was actually watching a video on that like 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you identify and clarify your goals?
I go through my own program. I
Go through your
sit
own
there.
program.
I go through my own. Well, actually, my program, really all it is the notes from the years I was trying to figure it out, and put
So
my life
you
back
flip
together.
that over into helping other people identify and clarify their goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, I keep journals like a madman. I document everything. And I just
Yeah.
kept finding these lessons from my old journals. Like, okay, here's chapter 1. Steve's life really blows. And I'm looking at what I wrote those years. And then as I started to figure it out. So, it's funny because I got the 10 modules.
Mm-hmm.
And most people say, like, people have these vision board parties and they go, hey, show up. We got wine, cheese, cracker, scissors, and glue sticks. And they think that getting together and laughing and cutting up magazines is going to set their goals. Well, in my program, you don't even look at pictures until module 7 out of 10.
Mm.
All the other stuff is prep work. Understand
Yeah.
where you are now, and then think of where you want to go. So that's the first thing, is know where your life is right now, and then start to figure out, all right, in 1 year, where would each part of my life, what would I want it to look like, feel like, sound like, smell like? Connect your senses, make it very experiential. So it's not
Yeah.
just stuff. We're not writing letters to Santa Claus. Dear Santa Claus, I want all this crap. We're writing who and how we want our life to be, say, a year from now. Don't listen to these gurus, that's my opinion, who say, all right, 20 years from now, what do you want your life to look like? Because you're going to wake up tomorrow back in your own bedroom, scared to death of what you got to do over the next 20 years. Let's just talk a year. And let's talk one little action a day.
That was
And
going to
so
be
I
my
try
question.
to,
3 to 5 years. What do you think of that? 3 to 5 year goals. But I think you just answered it right there. Just take it one at a
yeah,
time.
well, 3 to 5 years are fine, but think of what you have to do in that first year.
Hmm.
Take those goals. Nothing wrong with having those goals. Nothing wrong with the 20-year goals, but don't think you got to do it all at once. So many people say you got to take massive action. Well, hey, we got lives, we got schedules, we got fears we haven't gotten through yet. So I
Hmm.
recommend to people, start small, start in the basement or in the ashes, wherever you are now.
Yeah.
What's one of my mentors, my brother, Chris Whitehead, great guy from Iconic Alliance. You're going to be hearing a lot from him over the next year. He's going to launch big. He tells me, he goes, brother, 1% a day. Come on, you can do that.
Yeah.
1% a day better. That's all it is. It's kind of along the same principle as Jeff Olson, the Slight Edge.
Hmm.
Just taking that little bit more each day that over time gets you farther and farther away from that rut you would have just stayed traveling in.
Yeah.
So first thing I tell everybody I work with, this is going to sound really weird at first. Promise, but I'll get you through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm gonna check that out because that's been a big thing. I've got my goal book right here that I've been
Nice.
working on a lot lately. So between physical and digital vision boards, like which one do you prefer?
I prefer physical because I'm very hands-on and kinesthetic learner. We're actually
Hmm.
touching and being a part of the
Those
process of
senses.
arranging. Yeah. Adding as many senses as possible to it. And then some people prefer digital. I'm just a person who, if I can physically hold it, and I've got one, it's way over there, in my hand and look at it and prop it up on the wall or my desk or something where I can actually physically pick up and hold it and connect with the energy of it.
Yeah.
I'm 53 years old, so I'm from, much of my life was spent pre-digital anyway.
Yeah.
So I've just always kind of been that way. And I just feel that when you can touch it, you've added a sense, you've added a connection to it. And it's not just like swipe to your next picture, swipe to your next picture. It's actually physically real. But then what I tell people to do is take a picture of it, make it the wallpaper on their phone, their tablet, their laptop, their computer screen. Print
That's
out a
smart.
copy, fold it up, put it in the visor of your car if your person is on the road a lot for business.
Yeah.
Every time before you go into a meeting, or at least every morning when you sit in the car, I want you to look at it and say, okay, what one picture in one part of my life am I going to take one action for today? So you stay connected with it. You don't just build it and then chuck it in the closet or let it gather dust.
That's smart. I like that. Yeah, and that's something that I've noticed the past year or so is I used to be that New Year's resolution guy where I was like, I'm gonna run a mile a day and I'm gonna start eating turkey bacon instead of regular bacon. But now it's now it's just do it. Just make goals
Yeah.
and I agree with what you said. The more you look at them, you can't just. I think oftentimes we create them, we write them down somewhere, and then they end up getting okay. That's in the way right now. I need to move it. Or I'm gonna put
Yeah.
my coffee on top of it. But I think you
Yeah.
do have to.
You're back under the lamp with the salsa
You
stain in
got
there.
you
Yeah.
got to yeah. But I think getting
People ask
eyes
them,
on it.
where'd you make that up? I go, no, literally. I said, that was my list of resolutions one year.
You're making fun of
People
me
think I
now.
make this stuff up. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you only knew, you know,
So the two things I have to kind of wrap this up. Biggest thing you've learned about yourself throughout your incredible journey.
I've got everything I need to get to whatever next level. Everything I've done, people say, well, Steve, was 10 years in radio a waste because you're not doing it anymore? No, it was a brick.
Learn from it.
Stand-up comedy, you did 7 years and you're not doing it anymore. Why'd you quit? It's a brick.
Like that.
Everything that you've survived up till now makes you an authority on something.
Yeah.
And it all led to me being able to do this. I couldn't have done what I did, what I'm doing now. I couldn't have done it in my 20s because I hadn't learned all the stuff I
Mm-hmm.
needed to get here. So wherever, your listeners right now, wherever you're at, think of what you learned that got you this far. And
Very true.
you're only going to be able to go so far on your own, because I believe that's the way we're supposed to be. You bring in the right people in your partner, and you look up the mountain a little bit, see who's ahead of you, and you say, hey, I'm kind of climbing this for the first time. Successful people, and I'm surrounded by them, will turn around, hold their hand out and say, you want to come up here? All right, come up to here. I'm going to grab your hand. We're going to sit on the rock eating the sandwich, and I'm going to ask you what your goals are. And then we're going to walk up together. That's what this is all like.
Like what you said on the Ignite podcast, or you're talking about how we're all trying to get to that mountaintop, but COVID knocked some trees down in front of us, and it's all about who's got the chainsaw or who can climb over them. It really made you realize like who's going to be really intentional about getting these goals.
Yeah. And if you don't have a chainsaw and you can't dig under or climb over, start walking left or right. You're going to either come to roots or treetops, but you got to walk far enough to get around to get back on track. And you're going to meet some cool people in the process who are just as willing as you are to get to the top of that mountain, no matter what. And then you got a cool story of something you overcame.
I'm still in every bit of that.
Too. Yep.
I'm still in every bit of that. I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit.
Fondly. What's the old thing? This person said it. I heard it somewhere. I had this great idea. That's the 3 levels of accreditation over time.
Always take credit for something, even if you didn't do it.
Yep. Yep. I try to never do that. I actually had a famous person steal one of my quotes one day, and I got furious. So
yeah.
I had
there was something I did. Someone took it and put someone else's name on it online. Ooh. And it's a long story, but I was very agitated. This is when I wasn't even a podcast owner. I was just a regular. I'm still a regular guy, but I was just had nothing going in my life other than a MySpace page. But someone had taken credit for something I did, and I was livid.
I always said, look, there's only so many really good ideas up here. Give me at least the credit for the ones that fall out.
Exactly.
It happens. It just does. It's part of everything.
Yeah.
I got really tweaked at this one particular one because this person 2 years prior had asked permission to use it and did with accreditation. And then 2 years later, kind of put his name on it. So that's what I was upset about. But
started making it as like a Facebook post with their name on it.
He took it down. Yeah, pretty much. That's what happened. Yeah. Yeah. I reached out and I said, take it down. And he did. So.
Not threatening you, but I'm coming for you.
Yeah, right.
I know guys. So
I know people. Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be when people mention your name 50 years from now? What do you want your legacy to be?
I would just love for people to say, man, it was fun having that guy around. He inspired me. He believed in me. He made me laugh. He held the door for me one day, or he picked me up when I was down. And that's, if people just think of me and smile a little bit, I'm great with that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Simple.
Yeah.
Now, listeners, I know that have heard this episode, they want to find out more about you. They want to find out more about the vision boarding. They want to find out more about your podcast. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, start pointing them in directions. Where do they need to go to?
Super simple. Just go to motivationalfirewood.com. It's all there. We've got the products page that has my books on there, as well as the Vision Board Mastery Program. We've got on the main page, we have this free webinar. It's about a half hour long. All the basics for people who are going, what is this law of attraction, visualization? What is all this stuff all about? We crafted this really cool, fun message, just giving people the basics and getting them to understand how much control they actually have in their own lives and how much more on track they probably are than they believe. So yeah, it's all there. Motivationalfirewood.com.
Nice. Well, Steve, I cannot thank you enough for taking time to do this. What final comments do you have for our listeners?
Greatest lesson my grandfather ever gave me is, and he never said it, he just lived it. Leave at least one situation a day better than you found it. And if you do that, you're doing okay.
Nice. Well, sir, I appreciate you taking time to be here. Folks, that is going to wrap up this episode of the Shadows Podcast.